Welcome back to the Liberating Generations podcast. I'm Dr. Keesha Ewers, and this is my daughter, Regan Claire. And in this episode, we're going to explore how betrayal can be a form of trauma. And we're talking with my dear friend and colleague, Dr. Debi Silber, who is the founder of the Post Betrayal Transformation Institute.
Oh, so cool. Debbie is a holistic psychologist, a health, mindset, and personal development expert, the author of Trust Again, and is a 2-time #1 international best-selling author. She's also a 2-time TEDx speaker, and her podcast, From Betrayal to Breakthrough, is also globally ranked within the top 1.5% of podcasts. Debbie, welcome to the show. It's so good to have you here.
Thank you. So looking forward to our conversation.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So are we. So, we always start because the name of the podcast is Liberating Generations. We talk about intergenerational trauma. And I would love to open our interview. I know you and your story really well, with your personal story of intergenerational personal trauma and how that became a starting point for you and the amazing work that you do in the world today.
One thing that I want to share just right off the bat, because of even the title of your podcast, is I was told that the work I'm doing is to break the chain of all of the intergenerational trauma as it relates to betrayal from my family. So, that's why I was betrayed. That's why it was my family and then my husband. And, when you hear that there's a reason for it, it's like, okay, now there's at least it makes some kind of sense. So yes, of course, you don't study something like betrayal unless you have to. And that was my story. So I was in health, mindset, personal development, had a really painful betrayal from my family, and then thought I was over it, thought I did the work I needed to heal. And then it happened a few years later. This time, my husband. If anybody's been through it, you're shocked, you're devastated, you're blindsided. That was the deal breaker. So I got him out of the house, looked at the two experiences, trying to figure out what's similar to these two. Of course, me, but what else? And realized that I never really took my needs seriously. Boundaries were always getting broken, pushed aside. And so I was like, okay, you know what? If nothing changes, nothing changes. So here I was, and you know this well, 4 kids, 6 dogs, a thriving business. And I enrolled in a PhD program in transpersonal psychology. And while I was there, I did a study. So I studied betrayal. And really, I was studying it just to get myself out of this jam. But the study was on what holds us back, what helps us heal, and what happens to us physically, mentally, and emotionally when the people closest to us lie, cheat, and deceive. And that study led to those 3 discoveries, which changed my health, my family, my work, my life.
I just taught a retreat last weekend, and one of the things I brought out in this retreat was that the story of the villain, the character played by X, in the story, the villain is a really important role, and I go back to the biblical story of Christ in Gethsemane, and here's the night before his crucifixion, and he's praying and he's asking his disciples to stay awake with him, and they don't. And, he's saying, can we just move this cup on by? Do I have to do this? And then he says, oh yeah, not my will, but thy will. And then, I asked the group, like, then what happens, right? Then Judas shows up, and we still hold Judas's name today to actually indicate betrayal, right? We have this word that's synonymous and it's somebody's name, and I said, what was his role in this story, right? He actually, as soon as Jesus said, okay, not my will, but thy will, and got up and said, okay, let's move on with the plan then Judas plays his part, and he shows up, gives him a kiss, and what does Jesus say? He's like, of course he's forgiving. He knows this is the next step. And the thing that we forget all the time is that the one that has the role of betrayer, right, takes on a lot of terrible karma as that role, and then gets frozen in time as the unforgiven one, right? And yet they were the ones that propelled us into the next part of our story on the hero's journey, where we had to learn new skills. We had to integrate them. We had to come back and perhaps become an expert at them and teach them and help others, where if that had never happened, we would have never gained that skill set. And so I love that you started with that, like saying, like here's the role played by, you know,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
also I'm part of this story, and the entire story has a purpose and a meaning in it. And, I think that's important for us to always remember, because the victim role is a very powerful role to stay stuck in, isn't
Mhm.
it?
Oh, that's where many
Yeah.
people stay and live forever. And
Oh, yeah.
just to your point, the betrayers or anybody who hurts us, those can be our greatest teachers,
Usually
right?
are.
Even
Yeah.
if nothing more than we learn what not to do,
Yeah.
or the lessons of really what we're made of and what we have access to because of it. That's trauma well served.
Yeah, exactly. It's the university of life. And if we are willing to do that, we get a PhD in it. If we're
Mhm.
not, we stay in preschool, where we're still blaming and shaming and saying it was Johnny's fault. It was Timmy's fault, and so we get in that very immature space and we stay there instead of moving through in our development and saying, oh, here's what this taught me. Here's what I learned from this. Here's what I learned about boundaries. That's so important, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So I love this because we've talked about this, right? Like
Yeah.
this is we talk a lot about toxic masculinity in this
Yeah.
day and age, but this is toxic femininity
Yeah.
right here.
Mhm.
Holding on to the victim
Mm.
story and using it as your power platform, right?
Mhm.
Well,
When
we
you're
get
in
so
it,
much
it's good.
from it. Yeah. I mean, think about all we get from it. We get to be right. We like
Yep.
being right. We get someone to blame. We get a target for our anger. We get sympathy from everyone we tell our
Yeah.
Sympathy.
Oh my gosh. And you're getting everyone on your side. You're colluding like crazy. It feels great in the moment, but then after all is said and done, it feels disgusting.
That's because that's all you get.
Yeah.
Think about it. It's like, yes, you have your story, but if you're willing to let go of that story, the story that you have is so much better. But when the only story is it's so disempowering, but it's all you think you have access to and you can have access to, many people are like, okay, well, then I'll just take that because it's the familiar known.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yep.
So true. Oh
Yeah.
God. I've been thinking so much about this lately, the whole toxic masculinity versus toxic femininity thing. It is really such great work that you're doing, for that very reason. And yeah, I think it is important. I would be curious to ask you actually, Debbie, if you wouldn't mind sharing, like in your own experience when you work with clients,
Mhm.
what what are the like catalysts that you see when your clients are finally ready to really make change, ready
Mhm.
to really change this narrative of betrayal. And I actually watched one of your TED Talks, and I'm not going to phrase it as well as you did, but you said something like betrayal can be the catalyst for change, or it can keep you stuck in your story. You said something like that, but it was really impactful and very powerful.
Mm, thanks. So, yeah, it really can be the catalyst for transformation because what happens is everything has crashed and burned. You don't have access to the old, so you can mourn the. And I used, if you saw that TEDx, I was talking about the house, and just to share with everybody, I was talking about the difference between resilience and transformation.
Mhm.
Resilience is, you need that fear every day. You're bringing back, you're restoring. Transformation is a whole different thing. So I use this example of a house, like where, let's say the house needs a new roof and you get a new roof. That would be resilience. You're restoring it. Or let's say the house needs a new paint job and you paint. You're right. That's resilience. Here's trauma and transformation. A tornado comes by and levels the house. A new roof isn't going to fix it, and a new paint job isn't going to fix it. Now, you have every right to stand there and mourn the loss of your house until your last breath, right? And no one could fault you for it. You can even bring all your friends over and say, look at this. Isn't this the worst thing you've ever seen? And they'd all agree. And you have every right to mourn and scream and kick and cry and whatever. However, Should you choose to rebuild your house? You don't have to, but if you choose to, there's nothing there. Build whatever you want. Like, why would you build the same thing again? That's the opportunity. So that's the catalyst. Everything has crashed and burned, leaving you with this opportunity to build something deliberate and intentional.
Beautiful.
Beautiful.
So you did a study, your doctoral work, and you talk about betrayal as a type of crisis that requires a different way to heal. And you had these 3 discoveries about how long it takes to heal. Can you take us through that process?
Yeah, sure. And I mean, really, I only did that study to just get me out of this jam. I had no idea the discoveries were going to show up. So the first one was, I had a sense that betrayal was a different type of trauma. I had been through death of a loved one, I'd been through disease, and originally I was studying betrayal and post-traumatic growth. And for those who aren't familiar, I kind of look at post-traumatic growth as the upside of trauma. How any trauma, death of a loved one, disease, natural disaster, whatever, leaves you with a new insight, awareness, perspective you didn't have. But having been through death of a loved one and having been through disease, I was like, nope, doesn't feel the same. So I asked all my study participants, if you've been through other traumas besides betrayal, does it feel different? Unanimously, they said, oh my gosh, it's so different. And here's why. Because it feels so intentional, we take it so personally. So the entire self gets shattered and has to be rebuilt. Rejection, abandonment, belonging, confidence, worthiness, trust. Like when you lose someone you love, you grieve, you're sad, you mourn the loss. Life will never be the same, but you don't question the whole relationship. You don't question your ability to trust. You don't question your sanity. With betrayal, you do. So that betrayal is a different type of trauma. It needed its own name, which is now called post-betrayal transformation. So, it's really like, yes, you need to rebuild your life, but you also need to rebuild yourself. So that was the first discovery. Want me to go into the second one?
Absolutely. I will just right there. I remember we were remodeling our house and my kids were out of the state when betrayal from my husband, domestic violence, and I sent him to jail. And I remember sitting in a bathrobe on the mattress that was thrown down in our living room because the bedroom was all akimbo from the remodel and asking myself those very questions. Like, first of all, how did I get here? I counsel women all the time about this. Where was my intuition? Can I not trust anything about my spidey senses anymore and my ability to read people? And, it was just over and over again shattered that I cannot trust what someone says, but more importantly was myself. And that is so accurate, and then coming around to, the post betrayal growth of this, is I picked the exact right partner, still married to him today, love him to pieces, and bow in deep gratitude for, this experience because we've both grown because of the willingness to investigate what was going on underneath there that up until then had not been investigated. So, it's like, oh yeah, the idea that you've made a mistake because someone hurts you, that was also something I had to examine and say, oh no, like these are part of life's journeys, part of the lessons, right? But that had to be rebuilt brick by brick for me to be able to trust again and realize like, oh, I can trust that I will get hurt. That actually is what I can trust in. And then and then also that I'll grow from it and learn from it, right?
Yes. But I also remember you going through this. And I remember one of the reasons I'm sure why you healed and grew and changed as quickly as you did, because you honored your boundaries.
Yes.
And
I
remember
sent him to jail.
Yes.
I said,
Yeah.
you do not touch me in anger. And if you ever do this again, I will do this again, And so it was, there's an agreement, right? And so, yeah, I did honor my boundaries. I definitely did. I didn't come from a post-trauma patterning that is so often the case where I tried to convince him to treat me better. It
Mm,
was, no, you stepped over a line. You are going now to jail.
mm,
Right. And so that was a huge,
Mhm.
amazing turning point for the two of us.
Yeah, I'm sure. And it's also that increases self-trust
Yeah.
because when you trust yourself, there's a tremendous amount of strength there
Yeah.
because it's when and trust is one of those things that get shattered across the board with betrayal. Self-trust, trust in others, and all of it. So even your ability to stand firm in your boundaries showed yourself your own level of self-trust, and it's truly one of the reasons I'm sure why you healed as quickly as you did.
Yeah, I'm sure you're right, because the little child part of me who had been traumatized with sexual abuse in early life from a predator was able to trust me now. Like, oh, you will keep me safe, right?
Exactly.
When danger walks around the corner, you're not just going to go into freeze state, you're actually going to do something about it. And
mm,
okay, I can trust you. So that actually heals attachment trauma to myself to be able to do
Yeah.
that. And that was really powerful.
mm,
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So, if you didn't, then you'd have the classic symptoms of post betrayal syndrome. And that was the second discovery. And what was discovered was there's this collection of symptoms, physical, mental, and emotional, so common to betrayal. It's now known as post betrayal syndrome. So we've had, I don't know, 95,000 plus people take our post betrayal syndrome quiz to see to what extent they're struggling. And a few things about that. The first thing is we've been taught time heals all wounds. I have the proof that when it comes to betrayal, that's not true. Um, there's a question on the quiz that says, is there anything else you'd like to share? And people write things like, my betrayal happened 35 years ago. I'm unwilling to trust. My betrayal happened 15 years ago. Feels like it happened yesterday. So we know you cannot count on time and you cannot count on a new relationship to heal it. Healing is deliberate and intentional, just like with what you've done. And happy to share the stats, some of the stats if you want to hear them.
You know, I'm a science geek. So is this one.
share
Because
away.
it would have been really awkward if you were like, no. Okay. So let me share. So men and
Ready.
women,
She's ready.
I'm ready. I got it. Men and women, just about every country's represented. So 78%, this is out of 95,000 plus people, 78% constantly revisit their experience. 81% feel a loss of personal power. 80% are hypervigilant. You know how exhausting that can be. 94% deal with painful triggers. These are the most common physical symptoms. 71% have low energy. 68% have sleep issues. 63% have extreme fatigue. You could sleep all night, you wake up, you're exhausted, your adrenals have tanked. 47% have weight changes. So in the beginning, maybe you can't hold food down. Later on, you're an emotional eater, you're using food for comfort. 45% have a digestive issue, and that could be anything: Crohn's, IBS, diverticulitis, constipation, diarrhea, you name it. The most common mental symptoms: 78% are overwhelmed, 70% are walking around in a state of disbelief, 68% are unable to focus, 64% are in shock, 62% can't concentrate. So just imagine this: you can't concentrate, you have a gut issue, you're exhausted, you still have to work. You
Yeah.
still have to take care of your kids. That's not even the emotional issues. Emotionally, 88% experience extreme sadness. 83% are very angry. And, that's easy enough to bounce back and forth between those two all day long.
Oh, yeah.
82% are hurt. 80% have anxiety. 79% are stressed. Just a few more. Here's why I wrote trust again. 84% have an inability to trust. I mean, that just blew my mind. 67% prevent themselves from forming deep relationships because they're afraid of being hurt again. 82% find it hard to move forward. 90% want to move forward, but they don't know how.
Pretty amazing.
So I'm curious
Staggering,
now. I
right?
mean, I feel like there are different levels of betrayal, right?
Mhm, mhm.
Obviously. And so out of those statistics, how did you how did you measure the levels of betrayal that these people went through? Like,
Yeah.
being cheated on by a partner, um, that's I feel like, very high level of betrayal. Um,
Mhm.
Sending your husband to jail after getting shoved, that's also a very high level of betrayal. But I feel like these like little levels of betrayal that happen just in adolescence, like
Mhm.
friend stops being your friend. That's we call them capital T and lowercase t traumas. That would be, I feel like, on the scale, if you're measuring it, more of a lowercase t level of betrayal trauma.
Mhm.
I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah. Yeah, great question. And to just to wrap up the quiz, by the way, those numbers you heard, they are very high. You didn't hear me say one thing, 20%, 30%.
No, you
No,
didn't.
they're very high.
Very high. And they're also not necessarily from a recent betrayal. This could be from the parent who did something awful when you were a kid.
Right.
This could be from the girlfriend or boyfriend who broke your heart in high school. So think of this. That person may not know, care, remember, they may not even be alive.
Mhm.
And here we are living with symptoms today because of something unhealed from way back then.
Mm.
That's the crime right there. The good news is the third discovery takes care of all of that, which we can go into. But to answer your question, really the way it works is, as it relates to betrayal, the more you trust and the more you depend on someone, the deeper the betrayal.
Mhm.
So let's take a child who's totally dependent on their parent and the parent does something awful, or caregiver. That's going to have way more of an impact than, let's say, your best friend sharing your secret, your coworker taking credit for your idea. Still a betrayal, different level of impact. But also, just to answer your question another way, when I originally was doing this study, I wanted to study the betrayal of a family member, partner, or friend. And I actually had to drop the friend part because while friends can infuriate you and make you so angry, they don't break you. You're never broken, bent, you know what I mean? Like a family member or a partner. So those were the two that bring you to your knees.
Mhm.
Everybody else can infuriate you, anger you. I mean, in the study, I was even talking about companies that can betray us. There's actually something I think it's called the love turns to hate principle, where you can love a product, but if you find out they say something is, let's say, good for you, and then you find out it's not, you will turn on that company so fast. That's a betrayal too. So different levels based on your level of trust and dependency.
Okay.
All right, let's hear the third.
Yes.
Yeah. The third was the most, for me, the most exciting. And what was discovered was, while we can stay stuck for years, decades, a lifetime, and so many people do, if we're going to fully heal, and by fully heal, I mean symptoms of post-betrayal syndrome to that completely rebuilt place of post-betrayal transformation, we're going to go through 5 proven, predictable stages. And what's even more exciting about that is we know what happens physically, mentally, and emotionally at every one of those stages. And we know what it takes to move from one stage to the next. Healing is entirely predictable. Happy to share the stages if you want to hear them.
Please, please. I'm getting my pen and paper over here.
All right. So there's a distilled version. It's what all of our coaches are certified in. It's all we do within the PBT Institute. So, and it's all mapped out in trust again. Stage 1, this is before it happens. And if you can imagine 4 legs of a table, the 4 legs being physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. What I saw with everybody, me too, was a heavy lean on the physical and the mental, thinking and doing, and kind of neglecting or ignoring the emotional and the spiritual, feeling and being, right? Autopilot. But then if a table only has 2 legs, easy for that table to topple over. That's us. Stage 2, shock, trauma, D-Day, discovery day. Every single person who's hearing this knows exactly where they were when they discovered their betrayal. And it's the breakdown of the body, the mind, and the worldview, the scariest of all of the stages. The stress response is ignited. You have now set the stage for every stress-related symptom, illness, condition, disease. Your mind is in a complete and total state of chaos and overwhelm. You cannot wrap your mind around what you just learned. Makes no sense. And your worldview has just been shattered. Your worldview is your mental model, the rules that govern you, that prevent chaos. Trust this person. Don't go there. This is how life works. And in one earth-shattering moment or series of moments, everything you've been holding to be real and true is no longer. Or the bottom is truly bottomed out on you, and a new bottom hasn't been formed yet. This is terrifying. But think about it. If the bottom were to bottom out on you, what would you do? You grab hold of anything or anyone you could to stay safe and stay alive. And that's stage 3. Survival instincts emerge. It's the most practical out of all of the stages. Can you help me? Nope, get out of my way. How do I survive this experience? Where do I go? Who can I trust? How do I feed my kids? Here's the trap, though. This is the stage by far that everybody gets stuck in, stage 3. And here's why. Once you've figured out how to survive your experience, because it feels so much better than the shock and trauma you just came from, we think it's good. So we're like, okay, I got this. And because we don't know there's anywhere else to go, we don't know about stage 4 and 5, transformation doesn't even begin until stage 4. But because we don't know there's anywhere else to go, we park here, we plant roots here. We're not supposed to, but we don't know that. And 4 things happen. The first thing is you start getting all those small self-benefits we talked about. You get to be right, you get your story, blah, blah, blah. So you plant deeper roots because that feels good. And now because you're here longer than you should be, the mind starts going to work and doing things like, well, maybe you're not that great. Maybe you deserved it. Maybe this, maybe that. So we plant deeper roots. And now because these are the thoughts you're thinking, well, this is the energy you're putting out. Like energy attracts like energy. So now here come the circumstances and the relationships and the people to confirm this is where you belong. Like the misery loves company crowd. Here's where they find you right now. Here's where you join that lame support group that keeps you stuck and you sabotage yourself because you don't want to outgrow your new people, right? It's worse, but I'll get you out of here. Because it feels so bad, but we don't know there's anywhere else to go. Here's where we resign ourselves. We're like, this stinks, but I have to get through my day. So here's where we start using food, drugs, alcohol, work, TV, whatever, to numb, avoid, and distract ourselves. So we do it for a day, a week, a month, a year.
Ring any bells?
Yeah. See what I mean? Yeah.
This one knows this stage really well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was the mascot of the stage.
But that's the thing. Yeah, we do that, right? And it feels like this is all we ever know. And I can say, hey, that emotional eating, that drinking, that numbing, do you think that has anything to do with your betrayal? You look at me like I'm crazy. See, it happened all that, those years ago. Doesn't matter. All you did was put yourself in stage 3 and stay there. And that's why this is the one that most people just stay in. Repeat betrayals, that's because you're in stage 3. The big wall up, because you're in stage 3. Those symptoms, because you're in stage 3. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Can I get you out of here and get you into stage 4 and stage 5?
Please.
Yeah, I was like, oh, don't let me stop now.
Out of 3, believe me.
Out of 3, yeah.
She just hung out there for a while putting up wallpaper, but it's torn down now.
Oh,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, it's interesting being in stage 3 also. And what you said about then you just keep on repeating the same patterns, the same betrayals keep happening over and over and over again. Ding, ding, ding. Absolutely. Been there, done that. And yeah, so once you're out of it, it's easier to see, but when you're in it, then it's like you're in the victim story. I was in the victim story. I mean, just continuing to perpetuate the same stuff. So please share stage 4. I would love to hear it.
Yeah, and repeat betrayals, by the way, that is a clear sign of an unhealed betrayal. The face has changed, but it's the same thing. You keep going from partner to partner, friend to friend, boss to boss, and you say, what the heck, is it me? Yes, it is. Not in that it's your fault, in that it's your opportunity. There is a profound lesson needing to be learned. You are lovable, worthy, and deserving. You need better boundaries in place, whatever it is. Until and unless you get that, just as we started saying, you're going to keep having opportunities in the form of people to teach you.
I don't think I ever put betrayal to it, but everything you're explaining right now, the symptoms, that was absolutely me. So
Yeah.
it's very helpful.
Yeah. Good. Okay. Let's get you out of stage 3 into stage 4 and 5. If you're willing to let go of the story, of the small self benefits, grieve, mourn the loss, bunch of things you need to do, you move to stage 4. Stage 4 is finding and adjusting to a new normal. So here's where you acknowledge, I can't undo what happened, but I control what I do with it. Right there in that decision, you start turning down the stress response. You're not healing just yet, but at least you stop the massive damage that you've been creating in stages 2 and stage 3. Stage 4 feels like if you've ever moved. If you've ever moved to a new house, office, condo, apartment, whatever, all your stuff's not there. It's not quite cozy yet, but you're like, okay, we got this. It feels like that. But think about it. If you were to move, you don't bring everything with you. You don't bring the things that don't represent who you're now ready to be in that new space. And what I found was there's one spot moving from stage 3 to stage 4. If your friends weren't there for you, you've outgrown them right here.
Right.
She knows this one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And people say, what the heck? I've had these friends 10, 20, 30 years. Is it me? Yes, it is. You're undergoing a transformation. And if they don't rise, they don't come. Now, really important point right here. Many people will sabotage themselves right in this one space because they're afraid to outgrow their people.
Mm-hmm.
So they will sabotage their growth because like, uh-oh, I don't know who's here. So let me just stay with the known familiar. And that is classic, a classic recipe for repeat betrayal right there, because we don't want to be alone and without our people. So you want to know a little trick?
Yeah.
As you're healing, start meeting your people up here because they will hold you and prevent you from sabotaging yourself. Anyway, when
That's
you're
what she
in
said.
that,
Yeah. Way to go, girl.
right? Because you need those growth-minded, higher thinking people of integrity, like just as a different crowd. And if you start getting to know them as you are doing this work, it really does prevent you from just going to the known familiar, which is the only guarantee is more of the same.
Well, it's what you said earlier where you said like there are your people that show up that are also doing the same thing, that are also partying, numbing themselves out, have eating disorders, are in their victim stories, right? And, that is surrounded by the same people that are doing the same thing. You recognized, you recognized.
Yep.
That's not supporting where you want to go and who you are at your core. And so she did that. And there is a crab pot mentality where the crabs want you to come back.
Yeah.
Right?
And I did come back a few times, I would say.
Yep.
That's what relapse is starting to outgrow, and then getting scared and going back. And then starting the cycle over again, just like keep on continuing to go back to stage 3. And then I think oftentimes what happens is a rock bottom of sorts, and that comes in so many different shapes and sizes, and it's different for every single person. But sometimes it's that rock bottom moment that is the precipice of change that needs to happen in order to be able to get yourself out of that stage. I know that was my experience.
Exactly. And those crab bucket people, they have a vested interest in keeping you stuck because for 2 reasons. Number one, your growth, they're going to feel abandoned. And the second thing is your growth forces them to take a look at what they're unwilling to do. And they don't want to do that.
We've
It's
talked about
uncomfortable.
that a lot.
Yeah. It's uncomfortable to look at.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You are going to be the source of someone else's discomfort. When I was actually just talking to a friend yesterday about this very thing. She's experiencing the crab pot scenario right now where she keeps getting pulled back, and we're not nearly as close as we used to be. We haven't chatted in years, but I just was like, you can be the change. I think every single person wants to be happy. Every single person has a higher power, whatever you want to call it, speaking to them. And sometimes it gets through and you start to listen. But then if you're not in the position of wanting to fully make the change, that's when you start reaching for things to numb, to quiet the voice, the knowing voice that you need to get out. So if you're the person in the environment that starts to make those really beneficial changes, people start seeing that. They start seeing your vibrant light, and it's a source of discomfort. And so they either take you out of their life completely so they don't have to look at it, or they rise to the occasion, and it's not up to you.
Exactly.
Had
Start
several
feeling-
now that she's moved through these different stages that she's now become the luminary light for them of what's possible. And they're showing up at our doorstep, and they're telling her their story of the same thing. And, and she so proud of you because she doesn't enter into rescue syndrome,
Which was
Mhm.
my thing
right?
before. Oof.
That just listens and says, here's where you can go to get some help, and I've got your back, And so that's really great.
Yeah, and the higher energy wins. So
Mhm.
you're giving them more than you even realize by you standing in that space. And you're attracting people at, that stage 5 space. It's a very different energetic space. And even who you are in stage 4 is so different than who you are in stage 5. So anyway, let me get you to stage 5 because I just feel like I don't want to leave you in stage 4. So stage 5 is once you've mentally, sort of moved into this new space, you've gotten used to it. You move into the 5th most beautiful space, and this is healing, rebirth, and a new worldview. The body starts to heal, self-love, self-care, eating well, exercise. You didn't have the bandwidth for that earlier. Now you do. The mind is healing. You're making new rules. You're making new boundaries based on the road you just traveled. And you have a new worldview based on everything you see so clearly now. And the 4 legs of the table, in the beginning, it was all about the physical and the mental. By this point, we're solidly grounded because we're focused on the emotional and the spiritual too. So those are the 5 stages. And if I tell you how many new levels of health, new relationships, new businesses are birthed in that stage 4 or 5 space, it's
Yeah.
beautiful. Yeah. So it's very exciting. Good for you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Oh,
Must be so proud, Mama.
I love you too.
yeah, that's stage 5. That's how Liberating Generations came to be.
Yep.
Yeah.
Was out of
Yeah.
stage 5.
Yep.
Yeah, that's it. It's these stage 5 things that when you're in it, you just don't have access to it. But when you move through all these new ideas that can benefit you, humanity, they just start showing up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Insane.
I love you.
Deb, thank you so much. This has been so incredible. And I
Mm.
know you have the quiz available. We're putting the link, everybody, for this post-betrayal quiz. And you can take it and get connected to Dr. Silver's work. So I really have enjoyed so much seeing you again. We haven't talked for a long time.
I
And
know.
It was so nice meeting you.
yeah,
Seriously.
You too. And I have to tell you, you look different in stage 5. And Keesha, you look different. You look beautiful.
oh, thank you.
There is. And I remember doing a video on accelerated aging and betrayal and healing. You look 10 years younger.
Mm.
Yeah, you look beautiful. I mean, you always look beautiful, but I just see this glow on you. It's beautiful.
Yes. Gorgeous.
Yeah, thanks
Gorgeous.
everybody. And you do too. I mean,
Yes.
there are some people in the healing world that don't walk their talk, and then there are others that do. And I just want to tell everybody that Dr. Silver is somebody that walks her talk. Yeah,
That's someone I want to work with.
exactly.
I
All right.
appreciate you.
All right, everybody. Until next time, be well.